You see here we have 12 papers, and for each of these 12 papers we have 12 values for each of these different categories: calories, BMI, health, education, and income. So 12 papers, 12 values. And indeed the count of these values is 12. Let's double click on it. We select all of them plus an extra one, as we've learned before. And we have a count of 12. And the average is also based on these 12 values over here. Now, if that's the case, why is it that BMI has only 11 values, even though there are 12 that are listed? How can that be? Now perhaps I haven't selected all of them. I've only selected the top 11, and that's why I only have 11 counts and not 12. That's unlikely because you never want to re-enter every formula one by one. Once you've established the formula and you know this one is correct, all you do is you drag it over so you're sure you're using the same correct formula. But let's double check anyways. No, that's not the reason. You see, I'm collecting all of them, yet I still come up with a count of 11 and not of 12. Why? Well, it turns out that Excel has each cell formatted in different ways, potentially different ways. This cell here, where I have the cursor on right now, is formatted as general. And here for BMI, this top number, 29, is formatted as a number. So is 30. But 35 has been formatted for some reason as text. And that's why, even though it's listed, it's not factored in the count, nor the average, even though it's been selected. But it's not a number, therefore you can't do an average of something that's not a number, nor can you count it as a number, because it is not one. This means that if you have such a type of error, anything that you calculate, any results that you come up with, will be wrong. So there's no purpose in doing a search and a review and an analysis if your analysis is wrong. Garbage in, garbage out. So it is critical that you figure out if you have such a type of issue in your sheet. So how do you figure that one out? Well, you can see if the counts match across categories. And in a small spreadsheet like this, it's really easy to do. You just see it right away. 11 and 12 don't match. That can't be, even though I have 12 numbers. But if you have a very large spreadsheet with thousands or even just hundreds of columns, it's really hard to go through every single one and make sure that all of them match. So you can create yourself some little internal checks, some formulas that just speed up the process. So you want to find which one of the papers is the largest number. So you insert equals max of these. Select always one more, so you will always catch the last one if you add cells. And you do max, and max is 12 over here, as you see. And then you can say, put a formula such that if this number equals this number, and I'm going to put a $sign to freeze that cell, $sign. If it's true, then do nothing, if these two match. But if these two don't match, then put error. And I put here. And as you see, there's nothing there because this is not an error, but I can drag that cell over, and you see now this shows as an error. This one doesn't, and this one doesn't either. So you have a quicker way of spotting immediately if something is wrong, and perhaps you could highlight it and make it, a bright color so that you're sure to see it right away. So that's how you spot if you have an error. You create yourself some little self-checks to make sure that you don't have any errors. that's crucial. Otherwise, whatever you analyze will be wrong, because some won't be analyzed. The second thing is, how do you fix it? And then how do you figure out where the problem is? Let's do how do you fix it first. So how do you fix it? This is text. It would seem very logical that if I have this as text, if I change it to number, I solve the problem. But no, look, I still have 11 as my count, even though this now shows up as a number. This means that simply selecting all your sheet and telling it that you want it all to be a number will not work. What you actually have to do is put your cursor at the end of the number and then press enter. And you'll see that once I do it, 11 over here will change to 12. So cursor at the end and then enter. And as you see, the count changed and the average changed too. And this is now a number. And you can put it with the same number of decimal places by changing the formatting. This is probably just a bug in Excel, because you would imagine that something formatted as a number that shows up as a number is truly a number, but it actually isn't. So that's how you fix it. The second thing though is, how do you spot this? How do you know where it is? Well, here it's easy. I go over it and I see right away that this is text, whereas the other ones are numbers. But this is a simple sheet. It's not a hard thing to do. But if I have many, many more cells, I can't go through every single one and check which one is a number and which one is text. So how do I do it? Well, there's several ways. And again, there's several bugs in Excel too. So let me show you these ways. One thing you can do is put your cursor wherever you want to start looking for things, and then find and try to find something that has the format of text. So you select text and say OK, and then you find next, and this cursor that's now here will jump to the first text it finds. And you see it jumped on 35, which is text. So that's one way of doing it. Now the problem though is that it works if this shows up as text. If I put this as number, even though it's not a number because we still have 11 over here, now if I go look for it, find, still text, I say OK, find next, it doesn't find it. We couldn't find what we're looking for. There is no such thing as text. But of course there is. This we know is text, but now it shows up as number here, so it's categorized as number when you do a find, but it's not categorized as number when you do any type of calculation. It makes no sense, but that's the way it is. So I would not recommend using find and select, because it might show up as a number, but it really isn't. So then how would you do it? Well, one other possibility could be to use the conditional formatting. So you select cells and highlight cells that only contain numbers. I'm not aware of such a formula, so you can create a different type of formula. Instead of saying cells that only have numbers, you can say cells that have something that is less than or equal to an arbitrary really high number, so you're really sure that you select everything. And every cell that will have a number that's less than or equal to this number here will be formatted in a specific color, let's say light green. And so anything that's a number should show up as light green. And you see right away that they all show up as light green, but this guy doesn't, so you've spotted who it is. Now let's try the same thing if we do this as number. So it shows up as a number, but it's not categorized as a number. Does this formula still work? So let's select them all, conditional formatting, only cell that have less than or equal to a very high number, and let's make them green. And you see it still works. So even though find and select doesn't work when this shows up as number but really isn't, the conditional formatting does work, and so you can spot it right away. Now, unfortunately, this conditional formatting only works when your rule is that cells contain only numbers that are less than or equal to a high number. But if you want something that is greater than or equal to 0, you would expect this number not to show up as a number since it is text. But unfortunately, it shows up as a number. So the conditional formatting only works if you say anything that is less than a very high number. It makes no sense, but that's how it is. So to go over it, it is crucial that you have an internal check to make sure that your data are correct, that you have a method of figuring out where your error is, and for that I would use conditional formatting. Another way you could do conditional formatting would actually also be to use, instead of this, icon set. And for the icon set, you can put 0 as your values over here, and then everything that works out, oops, I didn't select anything, will be as will have a little symbol, and something that is not a number will not have a symbol. So there you go. You see all of these have the little green light, but this one doesn't. So that's another way that you could do it. So let's go back again. So you have to create yourself an internal check to make sure that you're actually counting and averaging and making any type of calculation on actual numbers, and that you don't have any errors. So that's step number 1. Step number 2, you know how to fix. If you have an error, you have to change the formatting, but to change it, you actually have to put your cursor at the end and press enter. And to spot where your error is, you go to conditional formatting. So now with this in mind, you can create tables that are foolproof and don't have many errors in them, because if they do, it's garbage in and garbage out.